Hi all, welcome to Shankar IAS Academy's daily newspaper analysis 30th January 2025. Look at this, the first article which is taken from the Indian Express which talks about Supreme Court's judgment towards domicile-based reservation regarding postgraduate courses in medical education, which is declared as unconstitutional. In this article, we are going to see in detail about what is domicile-based reservation, why Supreme Court has declared this domicile reservation regarding PG courses of medical education in India from prelims point of view. Look at this second article which is taken from the Indian Express which talks about promise of nuclear fission. This article speaks about recent advancement in nuclear fission, especially in China's nuclear reactors. In this article, we are going to see in detail about nuclear fission, what is nuclear fission, how we are advanced with this nuclear fission from prelims point of view. Look at this third article which is taken from the Hindu newspaper which talks about ISRO's 100th launch. In this article, we are going to see about 100th launch of ISRO which is deploying navigational satellite with the help of GSLV F-15. So in this article, we are going to see in detail about ISRO's contributions towards technological and also the space technology advancements, the self-reliance of India from prelims point of view. Look at this fourth article which is taken from the Live Mint newspaper which talks about National Critical Mineral Mission. In this article, we are going to see about in this article, we are going to see in detail about critical minerals, why critical minerals are important from technological and electrical vehicle point of view, and the functions and the composition of National Critical Mineral Mission from prelims point of view. These four articles are very important from prelims point of view. Take a note on this articles while we are discussing. Without any delay, let's get into the discussion. Look at this article which talks about ISRO's achieved a milestone with its 100th launch which deploying the navigation satellite Series 2 with the help of GSLV F-15 to enhance India's navigation system. And also this launch underscores India's advancement in space technology and self-reliance in satellite navigation. With this information, we are going to see in detail about ISRO in prelims point of view. ISRO is nothing but India's space research organization which was established in 1969 by Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, who succeeding India National Committee for Space Research with the aim of developing indigenous space technology for socio-economic benefits of India. The second one is to build satellite launch vehicles and ground system for communication, remote sensing, navigation and scientific research regarding space technology. And the third one is to enhance national security and global collaboration in space research. This is about ISRO's background and objectives. Now let's see some of the key milestone achievements of ISRO so far. In 1975, ISRO launched its first satellite with the help of Soviet Union that was named as Aryabhatta. The second, after 5 years, in 1980, Rohini satellite was launched. It was the first satellite which was launched by an Indian-made rocket which was SLV-3. The next in the series is 1994, that was PSLV's first successful launch which marked India's entry into reliable launch vehicle capability according to global space technology. The next one is in the line 2018. It was a milestone achievement of ISRO for the global space technology, that is Chandrayaan-1. It is India's first moon mission which discovered water molecules on the moon. The next one is 2013 Mangalyaan, that is Mars Arbitrary Mission. It is India is the first country to reach Mars in its maiden attempt at a record low cost. It is known for its achievement and low cost with the efficient outcomes. In 2017, there are 104 satellites in one launch. It was ISRO set a world record with PSLV C-37 series launch vehicle. The next one is in 2019 Chandrayaan-2, India's second lunar mission. Though its lander was failed, the orbiter continues to provide crucial data from moon. The next one is in 2023, that was Chandrayaan 3 mission. It was first successful soft landing on the moon's south pole, which was done by India. In the same year 2023, Aditya L1 mission was launched. It is India's first solar observation mission. The next one is in the line was Gaganyaan, which is under the preparation process. Even though in preparation, ISRO successfully tested the crew escape system for India's first human spaceflight missions. With this all, let's move on to the launch vehicles which are developed by Indian Space Research Organization. In this, ISRO has developed a series of launch vehicles to place satellites into different orbits. Let's see one by one. The first one is Satellite Launch Vehicle, that is SSLV, which was deployed in the year 1980. It was India's first experimental launch vehicle which placed Rohini Satellite Series 1 in orbit successfully. The second one is Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicle, that is deployed in the year between 1987 to 1994, which is also an experimental vehicle, but it is not fully operational. In this series, the next one is Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle series, that is PSLV, which was presented in the year 1994. It is also called as the workhorse of ISRO because it is successfully launched Mangalyaan in 2013 and Chandrayaan 1 in 2008 with a low-cost mission. It has various variants that they are PSLV G, PSLV XL and PSLV CA. The next series is Geosynchronized Satellite Launch Vehicles series. In this series, it was presented in 2001. It is capable of landing heavier satellites to geostationary orbits. It has two variants. They are GSLV Mk2 and Mk3. This Mk2 uses indigenous cryogenic engine in launch vehicles. When it comes to Mk3, India's most powerful rocket which used for Chandrayaan 2, 3 and Gaganyaan mission. Next in the line is sounding rockets, which are very earlier used for atmospheric studies, started with Nike Apache in the year 1963. The next one is very futuristic project, that is reusable launch vehicle. It is a prototype for India's future space programs. And also the small space launch vehicle, which is deployed in the year 2022, which was designed for quick and low cost satellite launches, mainly for small payloads. Now let's see some of the future launch vehicles in the line of ISRO. The first one is next generation launch vehicle. It is a replacement for PSLV with reusable technology. The second one is reusable space plane that aims for cost efficient space mission. The third one is super heavy lift vehicle, that is future project for deep space exploration and human space flight beyond Earth orbit. In this, we clearly know this. From this, we are clearly know that ISRO's advancement in launch vehicles have strengthened India's position in space technology and commercial satellite launches. With this all, let's see some of the future plans of Indian Space Research Organization. First in the line is Gaganyaan mission. It is India's first human space flight. The second one is Chandrayaan 4. It is a moon mission series 4 for the aim to return with the sample of the moon's atmosphere. The next one is Mangalyaan 2. It is the Mars series 2. It aims to successful Mars mission with the help of ISRO's launch vehicles. The next one is Sukriyaan 1. It is India's first Venus exploration mission. The next one is Navik expansion. It will strengthen India's regional navigation system. The sixth one is reusable launch vehicle. As we saw earlier, it is developing only for cost efficient space transportation. The next one is space station. Indian Space Organization plans to set up an India space station by 2035. The next one is international collaboration. ISRO is working with NASA and other agencies for deep space explorations. With this all, we are coming to know that ISRO is continuing to push India's space ambition forward, which emphasizing self-reliance and global leadership in space technology. With this all information, try to answer the prelims question. The question is, with reference to ISRO's launch vehicle, consider the following statement. Statement 1, PSLV is used to launch satellites into geostationary orbits. Statement 2, GSLV Mk3 is most powerful operational launch vehicle of ISRO. Statement 3, SSLV, that is small satellite launch vehicle, is designed for launching heavy communication satellites. Which of the statements given above are correct? Option A 1 and 2 only, option B 2 only, option C 1 and 3 only, option D 1, 2 and 3. The correct answer is option A 1 and 2 only. With this, let's move on to next article. Look at this article which talks about recent advancement in nuclear fusion, particularly China's reactor that maintained plasma for over 17 minutes. It highlights the potential of fusion energy to solve energy and climate crisis, but acknowledges challenges in commercialization. This article also covers global fusion projects, recently breakthroughs, and the role of private investment in driving research among nuclear fusions. In this article, we are going to see in detail about nuclear fission from prelims point of view. First, let's see what is nuclear fission. When it comes to nuclear fission, it is a process by which two light atomic nuclei combine to form a single heavier nucleus, which releasing substantial amounts of energy. This is the same process that power the sun and other stars. Under the mechanism of fusion reaction occurs in a state of matter called plasma, a hot changed gas composed of positive ions and free moving electrons. In this state, nuclei can overcome their natural electrostatic repulsion and fuse together under the extremely high temperature and pressure. That is nothing but as nuclear fusion. Now let's compare the nuclear fusion versus nuclear fission. First, let's see nuclear fusion. Under the action, it combines two light atomic nuclei to form a single heavier nucleus, and it releases significantly more energy per unit mass compared to fission. When it comes to fuel source, isotopes like deuterium and tritium, which are abundant and widely available. In this case, when it comes to safety, no chain reaction, it is completely safer. Now let's see the characteristics of nuclear fission. It involves splitting a heavy atomic nucleus into two little nuclei accompanied with the release of energy. And it also releases substantial energy but less than fusion per unit mass. When it comes to fuel source, heavy isotopes such as uranium-235 and plutonium-239, which are less abundant and requires extensive processing. When it comes to safety, it carries risk of uncontrolled chain reaction. It also requires robust safety measures against the fission. Now let's see some of the notable global nuclear fission projects. The first one is International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, that is in France control. It is internationally collaborative project. The second one is EAST, that is Experimental Advanced Superconducting Tokamak, that is under the control of China. The next one is Joint Europe 2 and STEP, that is Spherical Tokamak for energy production. The next one is Steady State Superconducting Tokamak, that is under the control of India. So we have to remember this project from India's point of view. We can expect question from this project. The next one is Korean Superconducting Tokamak Advanced Research, that is under the control of South Korea. The next one is National Ignition Facility, that is under the control of United States. These are all the notable global nuclear fission projects which are in the line. Next, we are going to see about International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor in detail. It was located in France. It is the world's largest nuclear fission experiment. It aims to demonstrate the feasibility of large-scale fusion power. It involves in the collaboration with India, European Union, USA, China, Japan, Russia and South Korea. When it comes to India's role, India supplies crucial components like cryostat, diagnostic equipment, and also Indian institutes like Institute for Plasma Research contribute to the research towards thermal nuclear fusion. The second one we are going to see about International Atomic Energy Agency. It was established in the year 1957, aims to promote the peaceful use of nuclear energy and prevent its use for military purpose. Now let's see the functions of this organization. It regulates nuclear energy usage worldwide, and also it conducts safety inspection of nuclear facilities all over the globe. It also supports nuclear research and developments which are very essential for fusion energy development. It also facilitates international cooperation on nuclear technology. Now let's see some of the major conventions of this agency. The major conventions are Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, which is very important in the sense of world peacekeeping technology. The next one is Convention on Nuclear Safety. The second one is Joint Convention on Spent Fuel Management. And this agency also releases some of the key reports. Let's see one by one. They are Fusion Outlook Report, that it tracks progress in nuclear fusion projects worldwide. The second one is Nuclear Technology Review. It is annual assessment of nuclear advancement all over the globe. Third one is International Atomic Energy Agency Safeguard Reports. In this report, it ensures nuclear energy is useful for peaceful purposes. It was ensured by this organization. These are all about, that's all about this article. With this information we are discussing in this article, try to solve the prelims question. Look at this question. With reference to nuclear reaction, consider the following statement. Statement 1. Nuclear fission involves the splitting of heavy atmospheric nucleus, whereas nuclear fusion involves the combining of two light atomic nuclei. Statement 2. Nuclear fission releases more energy per mass than nuclear fission. Third statement. Unlike nuclear fission, nuclear fusion doesn't produce any radioactive waste. Which of the statement given above is or are correct? Option A 1 and 2 only, option B 2 and 3 only, option C 1 and 3 only, option D 1, 2 and 3. The correct answer is option A 1 and 2 only. With this, let's move on to next article. Look at this article which discusses about Supreme Court's ruled that domicile-based reservation in PG medical courses are unconstitutional, which violating Article 14, that is right to equality in India. While allowed for MBBS admission, such quotas in PG courses hinder merit-based selection and restricted mobility. In this case, citing the Dr. Pradeep Jain vs. Union of India case 1984, the court clarified that domicile applies to the entire country, not for individual states. Despite state investment in medical infrastructure, the Supreme Court emphasizes that PG admission must be based on meritorious, not based on domicile reservation, to ensure equal opportunity nationwide. In this article, we are going to see in detail about domicile reservation in prelims point of view. Let's see what is domicile reservation first of all. When it comes to PG medical courses, 50% of central counselling which was conducted all over India. While state counselling bodies handle the remaining 50%, many states reserve a position of the remaining 50% for domicile candidates, which the Supreme Court has now struck down. Let's see the Supreme Court's ruling on this case. Supreme Court has ruled that domicile-based reservation for admission to postgraduate medical courses within a state is unconstitutional as it violates Article 14, which is right to equality among the citizens. Two judges bench comparing Justice Hrishikesh Roy and P.S. Narasimha delivered the judgment. This will violate the Article 14 of Indian Constitution if it is domicile-based reservation in PG courses of healthcare. Let's see the reasons behind this judgment. The Supreme Court stated that providing reservation based on domicile in PG medical courses is constitutionally impermissible and violates the right to equal opportunity. And though domicile-based reservation is allowed for undergraduate MBBS courses, it is not permitted at the PG level. The ruling was based on the fact that medical professionals should have equal opportunity across the country and a domicile-based quota restriction mobility, and it creates heavy inequality among the medical students. Now let's see some of the concept of domicile in India. The court clarifies that domicile in the Indian Constitution is defined under Article 52 and applies to the whole of India, not in an individual state. Therefore, state level domicile based quota in PG courses are a misinterpretation of this concept. Now let's see some of the articles of the Indian Constitution influenced the Supreme Court judgment in this case. The first one is Article 14, right to equality. It prohibits arbitrary discrimination and ensures equal treatment before the law. In this, Supreme Court ruled that domicile-based quota in PG medicine courses violates Article 14 as it creates unjustified inequality among candidates. The second one is Article 19(1), which is a subclass G, that is right to profession. In this article, every citizen has the right to practice any profession or occupation across India. In this also emphasizes that state-specific domicile quota in higher education, that is PG medical courses, restrict this freedom by limiting opportunities to residents of a particular state. It directly affects the Article 19's objective. The next one is Article 52, that is concept of domicile. In this article, domicile in India applies to the entire country, not an individual state. In this case, Supreme Court also clarified that the Constitution doesn't recognize state-wise domicile and the state cannot restrict admission to PG courses based on domicile. It is completely unconstitutional under Article 52. Now let's see some of the landmark cases regarding PG medical courses. The first one is Dr. Pradeep Jain vs. Union of India case 1984. In this case, the Supreme Court in its judgment clarified that concept of domicile in the context of India is stated that there is only one domicile for every Indian citizen, which is domicile of India, not separate. It is not specific for state domiciles. That is completely unconstitutional. The court also held that residence-based reservation in postgraduate medical admissions are unconstitutional as they undermine merit and equality of opportunity among the medical candidates. In the conclusion, however, the court allowed for some degree of resident-based reservation in undergraduate medical admissions, but with a cap of 70% of the total seats. This was to ensure that at least 30% of seats were filled based on All India merit list. That's all about this case. I hope you all understand about what is domicile under Article 52 of Indian Constitution. With this information, try to solve a prelims practice question. Look at this question. Consider the following statements regarding Article 91G of Indian Constitution. It provides right to practice any profession or to carry any occupation, trade or business to all citizens. Statement 2. Domicile-based reservation in postgraduates within the state level is not violating the provision of under Article 19(1)G. Which of the above statement is or are correct? Based on this provision given under the Article 19(1)G, option A, one only, is a correct answer, because domicile-based reservation in postgraduate within the state level is violating the provision. Not violating is a wrong statement. So we have eliminated the second statement. The correct answer is one only. With this, let's move on to next article. Look at this article. This article discusses about Union Cabinet's approval regarding National Critical Mineral Mission with an outlay of 34,300 crores to strengthen India's supply chain for critical minerals, and this mission also focuses on domestic exploration, overseas acquisition, processing and recycling to reduce import dependency and support sectors like electric vehicles, semiconductors and defense mechanisms. In this article, we are going to see in detail about critical minerals and National Critical Mineral Mission from prelims point of view. So take a note on this article. Let's get into the article. Let's see the structure of National Critical Mineral Mission. This National Critical Mission was approved by Union Cabinet on January 2025. It also aims to securing critical mineral supply chain and reducing import dependency. It was administered by Ministry of Mines. its total outlay budget was 34,300 crores. It was subcategorized into two categories. It was funded by government funding across rupees 16,300 crores, and PSUs and private sector investment is about 18,000 crores. With this, let's move on to the key features of National Critical Mineral Missions. The first one is domestic mineral exploration with the help of 2000 exploration projects for critical minerals and 50 mines to be secured in abroad by financial year of 2031. And processing and value chain development. According to the data, 4 mineral processing parks and 3 centers of excellence are working under processing and value added for this critical minerals. The next one is recycling initiative. Under this recycling initiative, 400 kilotons of critical minerals to be recycled in the upcoming years. Technology and research focus. It will boost mineral research, refining and value chain dependent efficiency in India. When it comes to international collaboration, India securing mineral assets in Argentina, Australia and Chile. When it comes to implementation, mission secretary led by a joint secretary range and empowered committee which was chaired by cabinet secretary. Next, we are going to see some of the importance of National Critical Mineral Mission for India. It will reduce the dependency among China for critical minerals, and it also boost India's domestic manufacturing of e-vehicles, semiconductors, batteries and defense equipments. It also supports India's energy transition through solar panels, wind turbines and lithium-ion battery manufacture. It also encouraging private sector investments in mineral exploration in India. Now let's move on to the global control and supply chain issues related to critical minerals and which are associated with India. When it comes to global control and supply chain issue, China dominates the supply of rare earth elements, that is approximately 85% of global supply chain. The second one is Democratic Republic of Congo produces approximately 70% of world's cobalt, and Australia, Chile and Argentina hold largest lithium reserves, which is very useful for lithium ion battery manufacture. So India heavily depends on import for most of these minerals for above countries, that is China, Congo, Australia, Chile and Argentina. Curb this dependency, we have to implement some of the effective implementation under National Critical Mineral Mission. Now let's see why are critical minerals important for India. First one is e-vehicles, that is lithium, cobalt, nickel, which is very important for manufacturing electric vehicles in India. Next one is semiconductors and electronics. For semiconductors and electronic manufacturing, gallium, indium and are very important for their manufacturing. Defense and aerospace. For defense and aerospace manufacturing, titanium, tungsten and beryllium is very important. From renewable energy side, graphite, vanadium is very important for wind turbines and solar panels to India to combat effective resource management. These are all the importance of critical minerals from India's point of view. Let's see some of the initiatives which was taken by the Indian government for critical minerals enhancement in India. The first one is National Critical Mineral Mission that was approved in 2025 to boost domestic exploration, mining, processing and recycling of critical minerals. The second one is Ganesh Videsh India Limited, that is joint venture between Nalco HCL and MECL to acquire overseas mineral assets. The third one is PLI scheme, Advanced Chemical Cell Batteries. It will boost battery manufacturing for electric vehicles. The next one is India-Australia Crucial Mineral Partnership. It will secure supply chain for India's demand among critical minerals. Now let's see some of the major locations of critical minerals which was available in India. India has limited reserves of critical minerals and is highly dependent on import. However, recent exploration efforts have identified some domestic sources. Let's see one by one. When it comes to the first one, when it comes to India, Lithium was available in Jammu and Kashmir, that is about to 5.9 million tons discovered in 2023, and also in Karnataka. It was very useful in the manufacturing of e-vehicle batteries and energy storage. The second one is cobalt, which is available in the states of Odisha, Jharkhand and Nagaland, which is very useful in the manufacturing of lithium-ion batteries and aerospace manufacturing. The third one is nickel, which is also located in Odisha, Jharkhand and Nagaland, which is very helpful in manufacturing stainless steel and batteries. The next one is graphite, which is available in Arunachal Pradesh, Jharkhand, Odisha and Tamil Nadu, which is also very useful in manufacturing battery anodes and lubricants. The next one is rare earth elements, which is located in Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, Kerala and Tamil Nadu. That is monazite, which is present in monazite sands, which is very useful in manufacturing electronic devices, defense manufacturing and wind turbines. The next one is titanium, which is also located in Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and Kerala, which is very useful in manufacturing aerospace, defense and medical implants. The next one is vanadium, that is located in Andhra Pradesh, India's largest reserve, and also in Sikkim, which is very helpful in steel alloys, energy storage manufacturing. The next one is tungsten, which is available in Rajasthan, Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh, which is very helpful in manufacturing tools, defense and electronic manufacturing. The next one is beryllium, which is also present in Andhra Pradesh and Rajasthan, which is also very useful in defense, satellite and electronic sectors. Next one is indium, that is found in zinc ores, which is located in India in the states of Meghalaya and Rajasthan, which is also helpful in touch screens and solar panels manufacturing. The next one is gallium, which is found in aluminium ores, which are located in Odisha and Chhattisgarh, which is helpful in manufacturing semiconductors and LEDs. The next one is niobium, that is located in Chhattisgarh, which is very useful in manufacturing super alloys and defense mechanism. With this all information, we are very clear about the importance of chemical critical minerals for India under the manufacturing sectors. Now with this all information, try to solve a prelims practice question. Which of the following are considered critical minerals in India? Option 1, lithium, uranium, cobalt, rare earth elements. Option A 1 and 2, option B 1, 3 and 4, option C 2 and 3, option D all of the above. The correct answer is 1, 3 and 4. Coming to the conclusion, if you like this video, hit like, do comment your valuable feedbacks, share it to your friends and family. At the end, don't forget to subscribe this channel. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.